Thank you to Thank you for coming today to our annual community conversation on reentry and relationships. I am Latasha Danielle Drax. I am the founder and curator for Love Beyond the Wall, community advocate. This is, I can't even tell you how many years I've been doing this now, but it started with reentry and relationships. The focal point with our first meeting was reentry and relationships, navigating the trauma and triggers of intimate relationships post incarceration. But then I realized that after that year, well attended, everyone enjoyed themselves. It was great conversation and engagement, and they wanted to have it again. And so when the years began to progress after that, I realized that reentry wasn't just about I love you, you love me more. There's so much more to reentry than that. And I wanted to be able to capture that in these community conversations with a panel of individuals who not only have lived experience, but are thriving subject matter experts and really have honest conversations and transparent conversations that will bring us from survival to a thriving state as justice impacted individuals. And so this is always a safe space where we are able to engage with one another, network with one another, receive resources and insight in how we can, as a community, as individuals, be empowered and educated. So this is always going to be that type of space where we're moving forward and not looking backward. Today's topic, how do I come up with these topics? I'm always in conversation with individuals. I'm observing. I got my ear and my pulse to the ground, and definitely through prayer and meditation, trying to find what do we need to talk about this year. And this year, finances was at the top. I think that as a community, we rarely really delve into financial literacy and money management. And I am so grateful that I have our panelists today, Mr. Joe Robinson and Neona James, today to really delve into the topic of finances, exploring finances after the bid. So that is the relationship with money that we're addressing today. Not only are they experts in that arena, but they are thriving after their experience and history with incarceration. And I love to see it. They're inspiration to me and an encouragement. And so I want to start with them individually. Introducing themselves to where they are right now, not looking backward first, but who they are right now, what they got going on right this moment in 2026, all the great things that's happening for them in their lives and what they're doing for the community. Neona, let's start with you.
All right. All right. So, like she said, my name is Neona James. I am currently in Tennessee. I am from Virginia. Um, with me, I have a nonprofit. It's called Protecting My Peace Foundation, and that is to help justice impacted individuals as well as low income families learn financial literacy, as well as the younger ones. Um, with me, I go over taxes, I go over credit, I go over building businesses. And it's just more of making sure that you're not being missed or you're missing certain things that are important to your lifestyle. When we come home from prison, we don't know what's really going on unless we've already been out here. And then you have some that has been gone for so long that they really don't understand what it means to fill out a W-4. They don't understand what it means to have taxes taken out or pay taxes, or even how to build a business because everybody keeps telling them no about a job. So that's where I stand at when it comes to my nonprofit and why I'm sitting on a panel, because I have been where you've been or I've been where your loved one has been. And there's ways around it. Just being told no doesn't define who you are, or you shouldn't allow your past to define who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're
Joe.
welcome.
Yeah, so I am Joe Robinson out of New York City, as I was talking about earlier. I also have lived experience with incarceration. I've been home. This October will be 10 years, and it's
Mm.
been a wonderful, wonderful ride journey, right? I've been teaching personal finance for 30 years, since 1995, so 31 years. And it was while I was incarcerated that I first uh, kind of reinvented myself, to be honest. And I think that when it comes to money and finance, that is something that we have to do. I think it's more than just learning about money and those things. And it's more about, it's that, but it's about changing the way we think about ourselves and think about money. Right, because when change, we shift the way we think about money and ourselves, then everything else follows. I'll just say that. I am the founder of a nonprofit. I mean, I had a nonprofit, Think Outside the Cell, but now my for profit is Mindful Money LLC. Mindful Money LLC. And we're doing a lot of amazing things. So I'll just say this. So I am the author of four books now. My most recent one is Where Will You Plant Your Seeds? Right? And it's based on my three-part financial wealth, or wealth framework. Us having it's called the SSI method: a spending plan, a savings plan, and an investing plan. And so the story gets, the parable is actually a parable. I've never done that before, so it's the first time. It's a parable about three characters who have three different mindsets when it comes to money. So that's one of the things I'm really happy and proud about. Another thing, I'll just be very brief. I am currently working on, and this is for the people impacted by the criminal justice system. I'm working on two apps. One is financial and kind of about finances and structure, I would say, like day-to-day structure after incarceration, because it's very difficult making that transition, especially the first 90 days. And then another one is based on technology, to help us with technology. So I'll just say that it's a lot more going on, but I'll just say that. And I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with Neona. We spoke obviously before this, and so it's great to be on this panel with her, with you.
Absolutely, Joe. Thank you.
Mhm.
And thank you, Neona. Neona, I want to start with you and your history of incarceration, and while you were in prison, what that looked like for you as far as work and the goals that you might have set for yourself behind the wall, and how it looked returning home.
Mhm.
Okay. Behind the wall, I started off as a housekeeper. That housekeeper position only made 12 cents an hour.
Mhm.
So, of course, my mom had my two daughters. I wasn't asking her for money because she had to raise my kids. When I left, they were 9 and, no, I take that back. They were 2 and 7 when I left. So she had little people to take care of. She had to get them through school. She had to make sure they had lunch money. So I wasn't thinking about her taking care of me. So of course I'm in there doing hair, trading off commissary just so I can have personals. Um, Lead us to say after a couple of years, I end up being a GED tutor. So now I'm
Mm.
helping other individuals get their education. Um, After I did that, I did a cosmetology tutor for a little while. And then I went to optical school, and then I went to HVAC. So I didn't waste my time. I went ahead and I got my education while I was there. I stayed in books. Um, but to be truthful, finances was not my my hit point when I was there. It was more of how do I make ends meet. So, granted, we think like, all right, you're locked up, you're not thinking hustle mentality, but in all reality, you are when you're still in there because you have to be in survival mode. So, for me, it was more a survival mode. How do I make this money? How do I make that money? How do I make this stretch? And now, unbeknownst to me, I'm budgeting. You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm only making 12 cents. I think the most I made was 27 cents an hour. And I was think that was doing laundry. And it's degrading. But at the same time, it makes you realize and be most so humble and grateful when you're making $5, when you're making $7. Because back then that was minimum wage. Minimum wage definitely is nowhere close to that now. Um, but that was minimum wage at the time. And when that is taken from you, you're making literally chump change. You have to figure out, like, all right, I got to make this work because I only get paid once a month. So I got to make sure, because you don't get a chance to call in and say, hey, can I wash laundry today so I can get paid? It's either you are working or you're not working. So for me, that's how financial life looked on the inside for me.
And Joe, what about, I'm thinking, Neona said 12 cents an hour, and in the free world, right? As we say, it's like that seems crazy, right? 12
Mhm,
cents. And you're doing like actual labor. You're actually
mhm,
doing actual labor. We also know that there's a disparity in society as far as women and men and salaries and things like that. So is that comparable? Like, that's 12 cents for women in prison. Did you get 15 cent more to start doing in the laundry?
mhm.
Is that patriarchy also there in
Uh,
that
it,
sense?
it, no, it definitely is. No, it definitely is. I'm trying to think. It's been a while. But I think it was like 16 cents. There's a
Mm.
pay scale, still cents. It's 16 cents, and I think it went up to whatever, they had grade levels, grade 1 through 4, if I remember correctly. So they had like one, it's like one, and it's like so altogether it might be like 8 levels. So like you could be level the bottom or top level, let's say, of each grade, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the most is a grade 4. That's what, and that was, I think, 16 or 20 cent an hour. So people made less than that. It was crazy. And so, like Neona said, you either learn how, I mean, she didn't say exactly like this, but you either learn how to work with what you have, what you're given, right? Some people are fortunate to have people send them money or to buy packages, and that stuff is a burden. It can be a burden on your loved ones, right? And I'm saying that for someone who's, my wife came and brought the packages and took the trips and all that stuff, the phone calls, all that stuff. So my point is that you either learn how to work with what you and manage what you have, or you end up coming out worse, right? Meaning worse in the sense of money, because things are way more expensive out here. So if you don't get it together while you're on the inside, you're probably going to struggle on the outside. And I see that. I think, largely, good with money for the most part, right? Because I started while I was inside. Because I saved those pennies. I saved them. And then when family members sent money, right? Long before I met my wife while I was inside, but when family members would send money or things like that, I didn't go on a shopping spree in commissary like a lot of people do. They want to splurge and act like they a baller or whatever the case might be. I didn't do that. I saved. I had a plan. So, but yes, to answer your question, Latasha, uh, it's the same kind of structure. It's probably like that all across the country because they
Mm.
have these conferences. They have these correctional conferences, and there's a lot of similarity across some of the systematic approach to prisons and incarceration. So it doesn't surprise me that it's comparable. It's comparable. The bottom line is, I'll close out with this: no matter how you look at it, we talking about slavery, right? When we talking about prison, we talking about slavery. Let's not sugarcoat it, and we talking about slave wages that go with that, right? So that's what it boils down to.
So, and obviously, Joe has a wife and a family on the outside, and you have your family, you have your beautiful daughters. They're staying with your mom, and you're making this 12 cents, and you're trying to budget on the inside. But when we think about all those needs that you have behind the wall as a woman and what you're making, tell us about that. Just kind of
So,
thinking, yeah, what does that look like really, as a woman? Because we know that we have to
so
maintain, right?
right. So
Right.
with that, being because where I was at was the maximum security for Virginia, which is called Fluvanna. They do make sure that they have feminine products. So they have their pads, they have their tampons. They do give them those. I know in some prisons, men have to buy their toilet paper. We didn't have to buy our toilet paper. They gave us those. Um, the only things that we actually had to purchase was our deodorants, our soaps, our body washes. Now, granted, you had what is the word? Inogen people that had to use the more downgrade. I think it was Bob Barker. Bob Barker products. Um, or they called it Lisa soap. They had to use the free stuff in order to get by, but they made sure we had. Now, if you wanted extra, then of course that's where commissary came in at. But they did supply for those that did not have any type of income coming in or did not work. So it wasn't that you had individuals in there that's just not taking care of themselves or doing anything like that. But it still costs money, just like it does out here, for us to be able to maintain as a woman. Underwear, bras, like all that stuff still costs us money. We still had to buy all new. So none of that was given to us to live. We still have to work for it. And it's not cheap. Same way we pay for it. Same way we pay for it out here, we have to pay for it in there. It's definitely not cheap, and it's not the good quality bras and underwear. It's the all white fruit of balloons. Hanes is what we get.
And so and this is going to be for both of you because I want to kind of move towards outward. Now you're transitioning, you're on your way home, right? You're on
Mhm.
your way home. And in light of that experience, the degradation, the tight shoestring budget, the what happened when you came home and had to face the financial realities of your existence, especially you have your children. And when you came home, what was your struggle?
I'll answer first, and then Joe, you can go. For me, I did have some money saved up, not a whole lot, but I had some, so I was able to make sure I had personals, make sure I had clothes, and I didn't tell my mom I was on my way home. I actually had got some of my good time back, and I didn't give her my release date. So I
Mm.
had caught the bus. Um, and rode the bus all the way down for 2 hours to get home. And then I caught a taxi to my mama's front doorstep. Um, but for me, it was more of I didn't care if I didn't have brand new clothes, brand new shoes. I didn't care about none of that. Only thing that mattered to me was being able to hold my babies, be able to see their face every morning. I didn't care about a phone. I didn't care about any of that. I was one of the more function, fortunate individuals because I had a home to go to. I
Mm-hmm.
had a family to go to. So I was more enjoying that part because I could have been at a halfway house. I could have been straight up homeless and with nowhere to go. And then I'm fiending for trying to get into a hotel, trying to do this. I didn't have those issues. It took about 2, 3 weeks until I was working. And I didn't like that because I was working at the Dollar Tree, but I was working. Um, and I did that for a while. So I really can't complain about how my life was when I came home because my family has always been my enabler, and we're not even going to say support. They're going to be my enablers because they knew I did wrong, but they would never correct me. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? So when it came to me, it was more of just, oh, she's home. We're going to make sure she's comfortable. We're going to make sure she's happy. And I didn't want that. I don't want you to do that. So I had to hurry up and get off from under them. And they, until this day, and I've been home 26. I've been home 12 years. They still try to do it, and it's just because they're so used of me doing stuff I ain't got no business doing. But I haven't done that in so long.
Right.
I guess when you get into a habit, you just continue to keep doing it. But yeah, me coming home and my daughters, they're fully grown. They moved with me to Tennessee. My grandbabies are here with me. So everything is is going well. I think we got a question. If you want to
Yeah, and
answer it,
I
we're
want
gonna
Joe
hold until
to kind
later.
of, yeah, to piggyback off of you, and when you walked out the gate
Okay.
and the financial reality hit you, right?
Mhm.
What did that look like?
Yeah. So mine was similar in some ways to Neona in that I was fortunate, and I say that because I don't take it for granted that I came home to my wife, right? So I came home to a home, very stable home. We live in the West Village in New York, one of the wealthiest areas in New York City. And that's coming from someone from East New York, Brooklyn, a very rough neighborhood, very, poverty-stricken neighborhood. So I had that, and I had a job waiting for me already before. My story is very uncommon, right? To
Hmm.
be not that it's the only type of story like this, because I have a few friends who had very similar stories, but it could have been a whole bunch of other ways, and I don't take that for granted. I worked in the reentry space on the outside, and so many people, come home to shelters, come home to families like torn, a whole bunch of stuff like that. Mine was, to be honest, was a smooth ride. And like me, I had money saved, right? So I've been, like I said, been teaching this stuff for years. So I had not like thousands and thousands, but I had money saved. And my wife and I, once we knew that I mean, we was optimistic, but as far as me making a parole board, but once we had like the date and certain stuff like that, we were looking forward to going shopping, right? So I had a whole shopping thing, set up for, and it's so different. I'm gonna say this because women don't often have that same type of experience as men. Again, I need to acknowledge that. Like I said, I had a wife who was stable, retired, worked at the New York Times, all that. So we were good, straight up good. My first book I wrote almost 20 years ago. So I'm still making sales from that while I was inside, right? So it was a very different story. And so the first day I got out, we went to a place called Woodbury Commons, upstate New York. Spent a lot of money on shopping. I had my list already ready. We had our list, everything. We like planners, like really, So it was smooth, and it just made everything easy. I'll just say this last thing. So for me, the first couple of years, I focused on saving, mostly saving. I worked, like I said, I had my job. Then went back to school, had work and school, so that was a struggle trying to balance both on the outside, right? It's different when you're in prison. You can go to college and everything is so regimented. Out here, the time is so different, and you have to develop a new relationship with time. Same thing like with money, very different, but this is a relationship with time. This is what I learned. It ain't just about being out. If you don't, if you're not aware of it, you can be dragged in all sorts of different directions because there's so much stimuli, so much. It's the opposite of prison. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that everything is laid out for you on the inside for the most part, right? Out here, is you on your own, and you got people who go in at a very young age and come out a lot older, right? And they don't know, it's hard for them to adjust. So I'll just leave it like that. But my main point is that mine was smooth. I didn't have any real hiccups. I'm being honest, and that is a blessing because it could have been so many different. It could have went a lot of different ways.
And thank you. And both of you kind of coming, and that's why I call Joe and Neon like the dynamic duo, right? Here where we're the way they complement each other so well in this space. But you both have that factor, or that external support was there. There was that framework. I love what you said, Neon, about the enabling. That, recognizing, sometimes our family can love us a little bit too much and it might not be the best. And then you had a stable family, and realizing that where that is not, impossible, that's not really a common thing for a lot of individuals who do come home and they do not have that external support. I made a mention earlier today, a post in regards to a gentleman who hasn't been home a year. He was reoffended, but he came home and was hit with child support, unreasonable child support. He couldn't find a job, and it was unstable. He didn't have a car. All these things, and so reoffending, probably. It's easier to go back than stay out because all of those challenges, financial barriers are hitting him. And how often can you ask people for support and help? So you have this external support or you don't have it. And if you don't have it, then it opens up this can of worms, right? And so recognizing like in those spaces like that, what would you advise? How do you um, overcome that? Because now we're transitioning into that mindset. Like you said, if we haven't, like you said, Joe, if I have been locked down for a significant lift of time, I never learned about financial literacy. I never learned about money management. I don't have an exorbitant amount of skills. I don't have this family support. What does that look like? And I'll let you guys mention it, and then we'll get that question from the individual that's raised their hand. Yeah, so you can start, Joe and Neona, whichever one. Like, if
You want to
you can
go
kind of hone
Neil,
down
or
what
you
I
want me to
said.
go first? Okay, I can go first. So I think one, I think there's no clear path, like, a blueprint, so to speak. But I will say a few things are critical for for everybody, but especially for people whether they did 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be, or a couple of months. It doesn't matter. In a county jail, let's say. One is to be realistic. Learn how to be realistic about in terms of finances. It's a different ball game, like this Leona and I talked about. We talking about being paid cents, meaning cents, like less than $1, right? And if you're lucky enough to save up a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, let's say, to come home, then great. If not, it's important to be realistic about how high the prices are. Right? That's like I said. I live in New York City. I used to be able to get us a little slice of pizza down the block for $1. And that's $1.50, right? That now it may not seem like anything, but that's a 50% increase. I think in terms of numbers, dollars. I wish I could put out $1 and get $1.50 back. Real talk. That's 50%, right? So people have to be realistic about how much things cost and how much they can actually afford. Another thing that's so basic to all the stuff that we talk about is being able to distinguish between your wants and needs, right? So that goes for everybody, right? So, but we have to be, um, change up. Some things we have to give up. If you smoke cigarettes, for example, and I'm just keeping it real. I ain't trying to pick on cigarette smokers. I don't smoke cigarettes. So it's never been a cost or a bill, right? Ever in my life, right? And I'm 56 now, right? So, but I say that because it's an expensive habit. So if you smoked on the inside, you might have paid whatever you paid in commissary. It's a lot more out here. A
Mhm.
lot more. It's like 16, $17, I think, a pack in New York City. That's crazy to me. That's absolutely crazy. But if you have a habit, then that's a bill. I pay less than that for Netflix, right? On a monthly basis. Let's do real math, real talk. If you smoke a pack a day, that you know what I'm saying, and let's say pack a day, 5 days a week, that's 86, 96, 7, whatever, I'm doing quick math. We're talking 100 something dollars a week. That's 400 something dollars a month. That's real money. That's money that could be invested. That's money that could be saved. That's money that could be pay your credit card debt. So we got to be real. We got to be real with this stuff, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat. We got to be real with it. And then the other thing is don't try to keep up with the Joneses. We hear that, or the Kardashians or whoever you want to keep up with, right? Don't try to keep up with other folks, right? I'll say one last thing on that. A big part of for some of us, if you was making whatever money, however you was making money, before you went in, there's a and I'm not gonna say there's a part of all of us, but you never forget those memories of making, the fast money or
Mhm.
whatever. And sometimes subconsciously people want to relive that and they want to live up to that reputation that they left behind. That's a danger. First of all, like I'm using my case. First of all, I matured out of that. I don't even think like that. I'm not impressed with that. It doesn't move me. I see young kids doing some of the things I did. I was like, damn, I feel sorry for them. I'm dead ass. That's how I feel. I said, I'm feel they don't know. They wasting their time. They're risking their freedom. They're risking their lives. Right? I did it. That was me. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Right? It's no judgment, but it's sad. It's like it's a they say they have a saying that basically the game doesn't change, only the faces do,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
I see you see the same faces. I'm like, wow, this is just another generation doing the same shit, and I was following some other generation before me. So we gotta be realistic. That's my thing. We can't play games with it. If we really want change in our lives, in terms of our financial situations, then we gotta, join forums like this to have these type of discussions. Check out our channel. Check out what we're doing, what other people doing. You got to be in it. It's not gonna be handed to you. All
Right.
right. Again, I'm not sugarcoating. Right. Neona and I are where we are because we wanted it. We wanted change. We wanted a difference. And we started it while we was on the inside. We didn't wait till we came out. I'm not gonna say it's too late, but you had a disadvantage because when you come home, shit is, excuse myself, stuff is moving fast, really
Mm-hmm.
fast, especially in New York City. It's fast, right? It is no joke, So you got technology, you got this, you got family issues, you got children, grandchildren, all this stuff you're trying to navigate, going from being in a very structured, regimented environment with not a lot of stimuli, same old stuff going on most time, to now a whole bunch of stuff going on. Right.
Right.
So you got to be focused. You got to want it. So that's my thing. Sorry to get long with it. And I get a little passionate about it
I
because we
know
got to get
that's
serious. It's
you're
not a
right,
joke.
and
You
that's what we're here
and
for. All the passion, let
exactly
it
what
out.
we're here for. But that's the
Leona, go
reason
ahead.
why I said, go ahead, Joe, because I knew you was gonna give it to him without me having to say
Yeah.
anything. So that's why I wanted to go after you. But
Yeah.
I do agree with you, and I'm gonna keep mine short. It's when those individuals come home and they come home to nothing, and they're faced with all these different obstacles. They need a support system. Even if that support system cannot help them financially, they need somebody to help them mentally. We always talking about oh, you need to make this money, you need, but we do, no, don't get me wrong, we need to make the money, we need to get our credit together, but the trauma that we bring home from being inside of those cells do not go away. Like I said, I've been home 12 years. I still, to this day, and they ask me to go into those prisons and talk to people, I will not.
Mm.
The thought of just hearing those doors close frightens the mess out of me. I can't do it. So when you have a loved one that is going through whatever mental part of their life where they're trying to adjust, if they feel like there's a job and you saying, well, you can do the job easy, find out what it is about that job that it keeps triggering them, or
Mm.
find out what you're asking them to do that might be triggering them, because the guard might have told them that on a regular basis and they kept getting locked down. Like, it may seem simple to those that have never been in those positions, but if that is something that has messed them up mentally, there's no way around it. You have to be patient. So for those of us that have came home, we have to learn to relearn ourselves and re-love ourselves, because if we don't do that, everything else is not going to fall in line. Once we figure that part out, getting a job is not going to be that hard. Getting into a home is not going to be that hard. Now, granted, there's going to be some obstacles, but there's ways around those obstacles. You just have to be patient with yourself.
I think that's a good segue. Ronnie,
Excellent.
thank you so much
Excellent.
for your patience, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Your hand is up, and I want to give you an opportunity to post or to express your question if you have.
You said my name right. My name is Ronnie, and I'm glad you called me because I'm gonna have to jump soon.
I'm so
I'm
glad.
Ronnie
Thank you.
Mentor, and I'm the founder of both the Sisters Healing Old Wounds Coalition and the Freedom. I'm sorry, Sister Healing Old Wounds and the Freedom and Shackle Coalition. And I did a significant amount of time in New York State prisons, and so I guess a lot of the conversation you guys touched on a lot of things that I thought were really good, but then there was like some pieces that I didn't hear. Like people coming home being released have to also navigate a medical system, right? And there are also stipulations on those parole papers that sometimes are very challenging for folks to meet, depending on where they live in the state of New York, right? So if you're way out in Suffolk County and they tell you you have to seek and maintain employment, but I live in Ronkonkoma and I have very limited funds, that's a challenge and that's a barrier to success, right? And I know so many women who came home from prison that had zip zero, that never left Grand Central Station and reoffended right there, right? So, and next thing you know, you hear they're back on Rikers Island, wherever the heck, Valhalla, because where Grand Central is, and it's been a challenge. Luckily or gratefully, they upped the gate fee because for years it was $40 in a bus ticket, and it's now 200 depending on your circumstance because that 200 isn't guaranteed all the time. And so I think when we think of these conversations, um, just keeping everything into play. I understand having money management. I get that part. I mean, my situation could mirror some of yours, but I made a conscious decision because my parents were very well off, and I made a conscious decision not to go home because sometimes family can be a trigger and a spin out situation for you. So I decided to put myself in a supportive living house in South Jamaica, where I'm from, and I didn't go back home. And I made the decision to try and do it on my own, which actually was the best damn decision I ever made in my life, right? Also, through Sisters Heal and Wounds, which is primarily working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women. That's it. Nothing else outside of that. But through Freedom and Shackle, we work with legislation and policies and procedures across the country that govern correctional settings. But a lot of times, women have this thing in their head that I have to go home and get my children. And that is another barrier to many women for success because that can be such a stressful situation when we're thinking financially, when thinking emotionally. You just come out of a 60-woman dorm and bam, all of a sudden, I got these kids pulling at me, mommy, mommy, mommy. I can't feed them. I can't clothe them. I can't this. I can't that. But you want that female to step up and do all those things. So a lot of times we caution women to take their time before becoming a full-time mom. It's a lot of layers to this financial conversation
Mhm.
that I'm not really hearing. I'm hearing a lot of stuff from people who were okay in their transition out, but I'm not hearing really the nuances that are very different from women to men, right? Um, and also just everything that goes into coming home because you could want to save $1, but then there's so many things that prevent that. It's so many things that are barriers to saving money the way you envision that you want to, especially if you don't have a foundation to help you out. I mean, it can be done. I did it, but I did it with the knowledge that I also had a safety net of my parents, right? So
Absolutely.
I was able to do it, and I knew sooner or later my sister was, after me seeing me home 2 years and still standing strong, she gave me a car. You understand? So I had different things in place that I knew that if I fell, I would be okay. But everybody else doesn't have that. Right.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to, it's good to talk about saving, 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 and all that. But the reality is, I watched so many women struggle on 11 cents an hour. Whatever they was making. Some couldn't work. They was porters. The one good thing I can say about women in the dorms is we fed each other. We didn't let nobody go hungry. right? We would never see that. Even if they had to wash a couple of pair of socks, they was going to eat. But I just, you know, there's women right now in our um on my Facebook platform, and they've been home for years and they're still struggling because it is hard to live in the state of New York.
It is.
See, we also got to look at what states we're talking about here.
Hmm.
It is hard to live in the state of New York and you have no one. So it's still, I can promise you that yesterday morning before 7 a.m., I loaned three people money. And when I say loan with quotation marks around it, because I don't expect it back.
Right.
And I never give money with the expectation of getting it back. But this is just their reality and they're trying so hard to stay home. So I just wanted to say that, but I got to pop to an NAACP meeting. And you
And
guys are
Ronnie,
great.
before you go, I just want to, thank you for that, bringing those layers in there because it is very important. And before you leave, if you can drop your information in the chat, your organization, so people can be aware of who you are and what you do, and you bring those valid points. And this is why we're beginning the conversation. And whereas we may not be able to encompass everything that you said, that is 100% true and valid. Um, I haven't heard these conversations from this perspective, and where we're bringing in that as part of rebuilding after incarceration for our women behind bars, for our men, and what that looks like. And and like you said, for even yourself, you came from a place where there is a safety net, and obviously Joe and Neona said the same. But like that example that I gave in a gentleman who he reoffended because he didn't have one, and he's not the only one, right? And so whereas we're looking at where we can be, we do understand and recognize that there needs to be some mechanisms in place for those who can't. And so we will not leave this conversation without that kind of where do we go from here, right? Which is a book from MLK, Martin Luther King, From Chaos to Community, right? What do we do? And can we deal with it today? Probably not. But do we need to? Absolutely. We absolutely do need to. And so hopefully, as we network and build resources and have these conversations, like I said, I might, I could be wrong, but I haven't heard that. And the reason why Neona and Joe are here is because they made it, and regardless of how that looks, I always want to make sure that people feel empowered because we do want everybody to come from out the mud. And what do we need to do as a community to ensure that that happens? But I appreciate you. I appreciate you and bringing that to light and not leaving without expressing that, which is very important. Leona, do you want to follow up, or and Joe, you can definitely,
I had a
and Joe, you're in New York, and and so
yeah,
Ronnie mentioned Riker, so we know what that is. We know what that looked
right.
like. We know Grand Central
Mhm,
Station. We know the cost of living in New York, and we have many on the call who are from the city, and so and we also recognize the differences
mhm,
between men coming home and women coming home, and those challenges that not only
mhm,
Neona brought up, but Ronnie mentioned,
mhm,
the stresses are even
mhm.
different. So
Yeah.
take it away.
So I'm gonna say this. And I'm gonna be brief, right? Because Ronnie, made some very good points, and what she described is the reality of, I would say, most people coming out the system. To be honest, right? I don't care what state you're in. Now, what I just want to make this point, right? That at the end of the day, this is how I see it. There are systemic issues, right? Which is what I think Ronnie was speaking to, whether she used those words or not. There are some things that unfortunately are baked into how the process of people's reentry, meaning the disadvantages for women, and, for example, the lack of resources. Unfortunately, some of those things are systemic, meaning They could be changed. I'm not saying that. If the government, for example, whether it's local, state, federal, stuff like that, wanted to put more resources and energies to it, if the communities got more involved, nonprofits, all that stuff. So, but those are macro kind of systemic issues. That's how I see it. What I'm talking about specifically, and I believe Neona's talking about, is not ignoring systemic things, right? So that when I say systemic, for example, we only talked about the medical, right? Talked about medical, alluded to housing and all these impediments or things that get in the way of people making a decent or smooth transition, right? Those things are real. They were real for me too. The difference is that I just had some advantage. The reality is the same for everybody. Everybody goes to the gym. What I'm talking about specifically is not systemic. That's a different conversation, which I'm willing to have, right? But I just want to say for all the listeners on this program, right? Is I'm talking about individual. I'm talking about individual responsibility, right? So no matter what the system is like, you still need to, all of us need to be learn how to become financially literate. It doesn't matter what the system is, right? And as far as I'm concerned, meaning the system is the system, right? So at the end of the day, it behooves me to learn how to manage. All those things don't go away because I'm struggling with something exactly, right? Yep, Fortune Society. We're going to get into the Osborne, Exodus, Transition Committee. There's a whole bunch of stuff, especially in New York City, right? And I've
Yes, in
worked
New
with a
York,
lot of those
preferably.
guys. I've worked with a lot of them. A lot of my friends run those organizations. Literally, we did time together in the joint. Now they're vice presidents and all this other stuff like that, right? But again, because people wanted to change. So I don't think it's, like, in other words, we just focus on a systemic issue, which we have to, right? But we also have to look at what type of individual responsibilities when it comes to money do we need to implement. So I just want to say I'm oversimplifying it, but at the end of the day, it's not either or. If the system provided everything, you still have people, right, not doing well. I believe that. I'll say one last thing. I was on a radio show a couple months ago, and somebody called on, right? I was the whole guest, and somebody talked about reparations, right? Now, I'm bringing that up to say this. I believe in reparations. I believe that people of color, we do that. I do believe that. But I also know without financial literacy, that money's going to go back to where it's been going. We're going to buy the Benzes, the Beamers, the fancy. We're going to do all the stuff we dreamed, all the fancy stuff that we think means we arrived. Because without the psychology, without the financial literacy, without the stuff dealing with credit and debt management and all that stuff, because what we're talking about, what Neon talk about, it, it's a life skill. That's what we're talking about. So you need the life skill anyway. It doesn't matter what the systemic things are going on. So I'm not saying ignore it. So we didn't talk about it because I'm talking about we like I said, that's a different conversation. We could talk about the systemic. I can go there all day long, right? But that's not going to help the person who gets reparations or gets money or whatever if they don't know what to do with it. If they haven't
Right.
dealt with the trauma that Neona talked about, right? Trauma doesn't go away. I've been home like she said, 10 years. I still feel it. Still feel it. Better at it than 10 years ago, but I still feel it. It's real. It's real, right? There's certain things that could trigger, and you're like, oh, that reminds me of prison. That's real
Mm-hmm.
shit, real stuff, right? So again, we could talk about. I'm saying I'm not, picking on anybody, but we could talk about the systemic issues all day long, right? A lot of my friends they go up to Albany to the Capitol to change laws dealing with parole. I did all that stuff on inside advocacy stuff. At the end of the day, this is me. Hopefully I don't offend anyone. I'm not just about surviving. I'm about striving and making moves. That's just me. I don't. You could put me anywhere without anything. People might say, "Oh, that's easy said as done." No, that's real talk. That's real talk, right? Because my mindset is such that I will not. And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Will not allow myself to stay down for long. I just been through too much, right? I've been through cracker, I've been through all of that, right?
Right.
And so my thing is, I know that I have the, and all of us have the creative capacity in us to, all right, we may have to endure some stuff in the short term, but let's not focus on just the short term, right?
Right.
I'm talking, I didn't get out, and as they say, beyond the walls just so I can stay in another wall, a mental and
Mhm.
emotional wall, right? So anyway,
Absolutely.
that's why I'm at with it, right? We
Yeah.
deal with both issues, but the individual responsibility is important because I'll say one last thing. I know a lot of people come on, they struggle. I've worked with this population for years and years. This is my people's. I'm just keeping it
Right.
real. Right? This is my people. This ain't no hypothetical, caricature or something like that. And like anybody else, they got money management issues. I used to talk to a lot
Right.
of clients. I worked at a law firm, right? And first time they get some money, they want to buy the expensive sneakers, so, and they struggling, right?
Mm.
But because it's based on a poverty mentality. That's
Yep.
why, right? And I'm not trying to sound like some conservative, this and that. It's real stuff, right? I understand it. I have compassion for them, because I spoke with a woman. I promised this last thing, a woman a couple of months ago yeah, no, after I gave a talk,
You
right?
on a
And
roll now, Joe. You on a
I'm
roll.
on
Go
a,
ahead, take
I'm on a run.
it.
No, cause I get passionate. And this woman, she did time in Bedford Hills in New York, did 20 something years, and all this other stuff. We talked on the side before I gave my talk. And she talked about how she struggled, financially, finally got it together and all this other stuff. And she struggles, like a lot of people, with spending. She said, because when I was on the inside, I couldn't buy what I wanted to buy when I wanted to buy. So now I do it. I treat myself. So that's the rationale. So the system didn't change, and she didn't either, unfortunately, right? As far as her relationship with money. So I just want to say that we could talk about the big issue, so we
and and
still
and
need to
and,
have our
and, and
money
it,
right.
all valid. So nothing anyone is saying from one to
Is
the
wrong.
other is invalid, right? It all is very valid. And with the spending, and I'm gonna let you go, Neo. And I just want to say, oftentimes too, because that term or that word trauma came up a couple of times already, is that sometimes overspending is a trauma
Mhm.
response, right?
Yep.
And so it's not just oh, I want to buy it because I have it to spend. It's like, because there's something triggering you to go and spend an excess amount. It makes you feel good because I even said the other day, I have a saying: incarceration leaves a void in the community, in the family, but most of all in the person who was incarcerated. And so that void is there and you feel it. What do you fill it with? It might be I'm spending excessively because I'm trying to feel something or fill something that's lacking. Okay, Neona.
I actually didn't have anything to say. I was agreeing with you all. I do agree with what she's saying. And it is something that should be talked about. It just doesn't go with reentry. And I say that to say this because what she's hitting on is more of preparing for reentry. Is not what we're talking about, is about those that are already back in society trying to get back on top. So all of it goes together, but the conversation that we're having is more focused on those that are already outside of those gates trying to get everything together.
And I
So
think that's a
again,
good point. Because as Joe mentioned, and I apologize if I cut you off abruptly.
no,
I
you're
got to
fine.
get it out. I got the passion, like Joe, just got to get it out. But there's systemic and there's individual, right?
Yeah.
There's preparation to come home, and then there's actually the reentry, like you are home, and those things they really they're interdependent, but they do have to be dealt with on a individual basis because at some point rather there has to be evolution, and I think we talked about that. There has to be an evolution where we know the system is not going to change. It's designed to be oppressive. It's designed to keep you oppressed, right? And oftentimes we play into that system because our mind has been shaped that way. the white savior, or this someone is going to save us, and bring us to a place where we can, kumbaya, right? But what if no one does? You have to be, self-reliant. You have to be accountable, for that. Um, but realizing that there is that trauma of incarceration, there's a trauma of incarceration that might be a barrier for you to see that, right? But then there's trauma from those in the free world, the same. We're dealing with these things that could cloud and interfere with our ability to make those good decisions as it pertains to, money, financial literacy, that we didn't learn as a Black and brown community. No one sat at the table and said, you know what, today we're going to talk about how we're going to budget. That's our topic for over the dinner table, right? Um, you know, uh, talking about banking, talking about saving and investing. Like you said, Joe, it's not too late, but when do we make the mind shift, right? To for that to happen, so we can start to identify with it, with money differently.
Mhm.
It's not the root of all evil. It should be a tool, and I think you said that before, as well.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Let me just chime in briefly and say that the trauma piece is important. It's very critical.
Very much.
I talk about it a lot in the work that I do because, again, I talk from my lived experience and observations. It's not no books. I don't need to read no books on this stuff, right? Meaning none of us. Like I lived it. So, and when I say lived it, I'm talking about the trauma part too, right? So, like for me, growing up in East New York and Brooklyn, right, in the '80s, right, one thing I realize now, and I've realized for some years now, is how when I started going and getting in trouble and, with the law and stuff like that, that I didn't know that my teenage self on some level, besides wanting to fit in and stuff like that, was trying to escape the stigma of poverty. That's
Mm-hmm.
real talk. Nobody wants to be poor, feel poor, be called poor, right? If you want to keep it real. So we want to impress and do all this stuff, especially as a teenager, a lot of pressure, right? So my point though is that for me, the trauma starts even before we go to prison.
Mm-hmm.
We already, you know what I'm saying? Most people who've been in prison, it's not like they just ended up there, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Not trying to be funny, right? And when they got arrested, it probably wasn't the first crime. I'm just keeping it real, right? We didn't do whatever people's MO was. My point, and then there are people who never, committed an offense, right? They're actual innocent people, right? So that's another thing. But my point is that you had trauma prior to prison or incarceration, a lot of trauma in prison, right, or jail,
Mm-hmm.
some incarceration, and then to Ronnie's point and Neona's point and yours as well, Latasha, that then they come home and it's more trauma, right? So it's like we used to call it. We had a name for it when we was inside because we did some advocacy work. We had legislators coming out, very active, right? Did a lot of policy work, even from inside, because I wasn't operating as someone doing time, if that makes sense, right? At some point, it was like, no, this has got to serve me, right? I have to come out better, right? And it doesn't
Right.
happen because corrections makes anyone better because that's not what they do. They're not in the business of doing that, right? But my point is that I realize that trauma plays a big part.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's why they have what they call retail therapy. A lot of times we don't see a therapist, we shop, we buy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? We trying to work through our trauma, our feelings of inadequacy, feelings of loneliness, feelings of stress, feelings of all this is real stuff for everyday people, even people who didn't do time.
Yep.
But it's compounded by
Yep.
somebody who did time because that's a unique experience, very unique, right? And so once we begin to learn or realize that probably a string of traumatic experiences are informing how we are relating to money. Once we can begin to
Mm-hmm.
start looking at it, then things can change. So that trauma is
Yep.
very important. We need to really look at it because Otherwise, I say I have a think outside the cell community. My first book is called Think Outside the Cell, and so a lot of my some of my brands is focused on that, right? Um, and I like to say in the community, part of our mantra is that I am the boss of money.
Okay.
That's an affirmation. I'm the boss of money. Money doesn't boss me. It used
Right.
to, right? And if that when I go, I'm going to the trauma because we are we have not just I mean just so many people, millions of people
You got
are
to start being
slaves.
institutionalized. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. You have to see money as Latasha talked about as the tool that it's meant to
Hmm.
be, and not as a master. I'm keeping it real. Not
Yeah.
as a different type of master, and we're the slave to it. So we're doing all type of stuff for it, right? We're committing crimes. We're selling our bodies. I'm keeping it real. All type of stuff
Yeah.
for $1. No, it's a tool meant to serve us, right?
Hmm.
Somebody made it up. Somebody made money up. God didn't make it in the form that it is. Some person made it up, right? Real talk, right? So we
So for the
really need
total.
to, you know what I'm saying? We really need to understand the place and role that money plays in our life. The only
Mhm.
thing that Neona and I are talking about, yes, you have the systemic issues, but you also have a responsibility to at least begin to learn about how money works, even
Yeah.
if you don't have it. Don't wait until you get it because it's too late. Because you
Mhm.
don't have the tools, you don't have the correct money script, right? The mindset, it's like the programming, like a software. It's like having a,
Mhm.
we get, and I'm not. This may sound, I'm not trying to be funny, but our brains is like software, right? The outside, the brain itself, whatever, is think of it as hardware, right? That's the outside of the laptop or the desktop or the phone or whatever.
Mhm.
But the real power is the programming on the inside, right?
Mhm.
That the money scripts, what we know and understand about money, how we relate to money. And it doesn't matter what circumstances you're coming home from prison to. If the
Correct.
money script is not right, then it is only gonna exacerbate or make worse your situation of coming home. The reason
Yeah.
why Neona, I'll close out with this. The reason why Neona and I, besides being fortunate that we had the support, because that is a big deal, no question. No question. But on top of that, we were ready, right?
Mhm.
Because we was working, we was getting our minds right. We was preparing for a better tomorrow. That's what I'm talking about. If we're not preparing for, we could just say, well, people come home, it's really tough. It really is. All the more reason you
Good.
get you get your money, your money scripts and your mindset right. Right. So that when
Mhm.
you do come into the money, that's why I mentioned the whole thing about the reparations. Most people will blow it. They're gonna give it
Mhm.
right back to Uncle Sam, right back to I ain't trying to be racist. I don't know who's on the stand. Right back to white folks. They're gonna give it right back to them. That's a fact. That's a fact. So again, you got systemic issues, and then you got individual responsibility. So we
Yeah.
need to focus on both, not one or the other.
Right. With financial literacy, it is definitely something that we have to keep in mind when we come home, as well as while we're in there. Yes, we're going to look at it two different ways. You're going to look at it as being, all right, they pay for my housing, but I have to make sure I eat if I want to eat something different. Because the whole reality, like I said, they make sure you have everything. Is if you want to be able to do for yourself, the opportunities are there. So it's no different than being out here. The opportunities are there for us. We just have to figure out how to put ourselves in that position. But like I was saying, when Joe was sitting here talking, a lot of us come home with institutionalized mind thoughts or institutional activities that we are so used to doing after being incarcerated for so long. Like I said, I've been home for 12 years. There's certain things that I still do. I can go to the store and I still buy 5 or 6 deodorants. I don't need them, but I buy them, and it's not something I intentionally just do. I just do it, and then I go and I look in the closet, and there's like 20, 40 freaking deodorants in the closet that I don't need, but because I had gotten so used to making sure that I have these amount of deodorants, these amount of soaps, these amount of body washes, I have still have not broken that habit. But it also helps me a lot by that doing so. So when not now, but in the beginning when I first came home, when I did hit rock bottom, I didn't have to go without because I had already stacked up. So those were things I didn't have to worry about. So it's just sometimes things that we do on the inside when it comes and follow us, people don't understand it, but it actually benefits us. So it's more of like just you have to find out how to understand financial literacy the way you understand it, or have it broke down to you to where you can understand how to make this work. Because like Joe said, our brains are like software. All of us are going to get it differently. That's why you have Dell, that's why you have Microsoft, that's why you have HP. All of them are same. All of them are same, is no different than how we think as people. You just need somebody to be able to explain it to you a little bit better so you can understand where they're coming from to help you get to where you're going. Okay, that's all I wanted to get out.
The audio, we can't hear you,
We
Latasha.
can't hear you.
I was talking to
There you
myself.
go.
Okay.
I said, and with that, you have to be open and you have to be receptive to those things, if you're
Mhm.
going to be
Mhm.
taught. If you're going to learn something, you have to be open to learn it, and then you also have to apply it. Because we can
Mhm.
consume, like even from this, we
Right.
it's a lot here. We've touched on the systemic. We've touched on individual responsibility, the challenges, all of this, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the passion and the purpose, right? But we're not going to be here all night. So once again, this is just the start of a conversation which I haven't had, personally, and I haven't heard it, for these communities, for this community. And so it's really, where do we go from here? And one of the things that I'm hearing, most prominently, is that individual responsibility, right? Accountability. I have to shift my mindset, and I have to also learn who I am and how I relate to money, deal with my trauma, and
Mhm.
also apply all of that together in order for me to be able to be successful, right?
Mhm.
Because as I said earlier, no one is coming to save you. And so, like, that question of what a reflective kind of thought, what do I do when I am triggered, right?
Mhm.
Whether I'm just as impacted, that did a bid or I didn't do a bid. What do I do? Soon as I feel some type of way,
Mhm.
what am I buying? Am I spending?
Yep.
If I'm spending, because
Mhm.
typically, am I, do I have a habit of some sort? Drinking, smoking,
Right. Right.
and is it the retail therapy? Nice way, some people like to buy, a little, stuff to make them feel good with a
Right.
companion. Right? Whether you're going on the corner to get it, or sometimes you just find companions to pay to play. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
these are things that, with money, there has to be, the responsibility individually is consistency,
Mhm.
discipline, all of those. That's, consistency, discipline, right? It has to be
Mhm.
prevalent in that. Because how can I save? How can I invest if I don't have that discipline and that
Mhm.
consistency? And I think that one of the beauties, if we were going to find a beauty in incarceration, is that ability to be disciplined, right? In a
Mhm.
routine. Like you have
Mhm.
a little, framework for it to happen. So it
Mhm.
can be done if your
Mhm.
mind is in the right place. We're opening up
I,
for questions. Go ahead, Joe. I'm
mhm.
gonna look at the chat and
I just
see.
want to add to that briefly because you raised a good point, and hopefully the questions come in. So, because structure is important. It's not to say that all prison is all structured, but it's regimented. And
Right.
as I mentioned earlier, one thing we have to learn in terms of life, money, and all that is going from a structured environment to one that's well, appears to be unstructured out here. And so that could be traumatic by itself for a
Hmm.
lot of people. You go in your late teens, early 20s, come out in your 30s, 40s, 50s, right? And this is real, situations. people don't know how to be really. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like trying to make that transition. So that's I just wanted to say that. But you talked about the spending. I talked to some of my friends, some of them they said, man, I struggle with spending. One thing you can do, because we want to talk about solutions, right?
Yes.
Is to pause. When you feel it's about self-awareness. I'm not saying it's easy, but you can develop a sense of self-awareness so that when you can pinpoint the reason or reasons why you spend and you see them come up, like you feel it or you think about it, because for a lot of us, it's a physiological reaction. Really, real talk, right? So that, you get paid, for example, it can, meaning from a job. I'm just using that for example. But some people, the endorphins might kick in. Okay, I'm going shopping. You already have it. Seriously, you already have an idea how that money gonna be spent. Most people ain't thinking about how it's gonna be saved or invested, but how it's gonna be spent. Some people it may bring dread, right? Oh, I got to pay this bill. I got to do this, that. But my point is, when it comes to shopping, stuff like that, or spending, because that have to be shopping. It could be a Lyft rides, Uber rides. You got, you look at your bank statements, it's going to tell on you. It's going to tell what you value. It's going to tell what your trauma is how it's like playing out, so to speak, right? And numerically, that's what it is, right? And so the first part is focused on awareness, being aware of what's triggering, and then pause. Instead of buying something, let's say if it's going out shopping, get some shoes, this or that, you know, you can acknowledge that you want it, right? And then say, I'm gonna give myself a day or two, 3 days, whatever, 72-hour rule. You can make it up. You could gamify it, so to speak. And so
Mhm.
that it doesn't again control you. The money doesn't control you. So I just wanted to point that out. One last thing I'll say is this, and this is so critical, I think. Growing up, you said this, Latasha, and you're so right, and I talk about this a lot, right? We didn't grow up where they was talking about finances. We weren't
Mhm.
sitting around the table talking about investing, stocks, real estate, all of those things didn't come up, right? But nowadays, 2026, hard to believe, there's no excuse. We got the internet. We didn't have the internet. As I said to you, I think on the call, we had encyclopedias. There was no goddamn internet, right? There was no Facebook. There was no IG. There was none of this stuff. So my point is, there's so much information. It's information overload, in fact, when it comes to investing, stocks, bonds, money, but everything is at our fingertips. So much so that I think, believe a lot of us take it for granted. It's free for all of us. The information is free. I don't got to walk to the library to get no books about it. I could right on my phone. I could watch Neona, Latasha, Joe, right, or whoever. I'm just keeping it real. Whoever I
Right.
want to find, a Wall Street trapper, whoever, right on my phone. I could be traveling, walking down the street, sitting in the park. It's amazing to me, and we take it for granted. It reminds me of how you have a lot of like some people, American born folks, right? Like myself, not me per se, but people who I think hate on some immigrants who come over and who in one or two generations the whole family is wealthy and they all this stuff. They didn't take it for granted. We taking it for granted. The information is right here. There's places in Africa and all over the world that don't have internet access like we have. They don't even have it. We have it. So I would say this. My thing would be this. If you know absolutely nothing about, or you want like ideas about not just personal finance, but how to deal with your spending. I have a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not trying to plug my stuff. So you can check out my stuff. But if you have access to Chat GPT or Google, I use Chat GPT more, you can simply say, I struggle with spending and give a whole little narrative about some of the things that triggered some of your goals or whatever, and then ask it to give you a plan, right? To give you some feedback on how you can get your spending under control. We live in a world where you can get that answer in 5 to 10 seconds. I just want to say that. And that's real talk. You don't have to go anywhere. Right on your phone. You're talking to your phone. Hey, chat. You don't even got to say your name. Some people give it a name and all that. But you can just say, I struggle with spending. Give me 5 tips on how I can start right now with getting my spending under control. And you'll get it. Guess what? 10, 15 years ago, you would have to pay a financial advisor for that. You had to pay a financial advisor. Now you can get a free Chat GPT subscription and get that information. And then, like you said, Latasha, you just gotta apply it. That's it. I dropped the mic.
Um, and the segue is to a question that we have in the chat, and is specifically directed to Neona. Um, and the question is, what would be some steps to have those financially get on track? And coming from your perspective, Neona, what would you say step one, step one, and that goes back to something that you said even earlier, speaking to where a person is, right? And
Right.
even Joe said it from a different perspective as well, right?
Yeah.
Everybody can't start at the investing point, right? You got to
Correct.
build the capacity to achieve certain things from where you are. So step one from,
So,
yeah.
like you said, step one, it really all depends on where you're at. But with step one, it'll be just what are their goals. That's
Mhm.
the first thing I need to know. What is your first goal? What do you want to accomplish? You're accomplishing just getting a bank account? Are you accomplishing because you want to get a car? Are you accomplishing because you want to finally be able to get a house of your own? You're trying to get your credit right. It really all depends on what our goal is, on where we're going to start at. So the individuals that I work with, when they first come home, that's the first thing we go over. I just need to know your goal. What is it? Why are you coming to me? What is it that you want me to assist you with? What do you want me to help shed light on? And what do you want me to help guide you to go do? Because what I do is more of a mentorship. I'm more of their friend than their advisor. I'm going to give it to them just like a friend would give it to you. I want them to be able to understand what I'm doing is from a passion, not because I get a government check from this person, or this person is donated for you to be able to be sponsored or anything of that nature. It's more of just wanting to know, where do you stand at? What is it that you are scared to do by yourself? What is it that you are struggling to do by yourself? So majority of them, of course, they need a bank account. All right, I'm gonna spot you $20 so we can open up this bank account. Let that $20 sit there. You can put 15 in the bank account. You can put five in your savings. Every time you get paid, we're gonna add a little bit more to that savings. I'm gonna help you build. So it's more of just finding out where they at, basically. And if they tell me, hey, I want to buy a house eventually, of course, they're going to have some stepping stones. They got to get at least 2 years of tax returns before they can buy a home. So I know I got 2 years to help them build their credit. I know I got 2 years to help them stack their money. So it just really all depends on where they at. So I know where I'm pushing them to, or what track I'm trying to keep them on. But
and
that's
and,
just me.
yeah, and that's, and you reference yourself as a mentor, and we know a mentor doesn't do it. Goes back to the self accountability and being independent and self-sufficient, right? A mentor doesn't do it for you but guide you through the process, right? So Joe starts even with you know starting with being proactive. We because I know oftentimes I'm overstimulated. It is a lot of information to consume, but at the same time, it is information that is available to us if we want it. So be proactive. Be proactive in the plan that you have devised for your life. But then also, what are the plans for your life? That you need to lay that out, and those plans shouldn't start with, well, I want to buy, a nice outfit, like just being real surface, right? What are those long-term goals that you have for yourself? Where do I see myself 5 years from now? Where do I see myself 10 years from now? What kind of generational wealth, if I have children or if I plan to have children, where am I going, from here? How do I get there? And it's not
Mm,
going to be with excessive spending. It's not without
right.
just looking really inward to ourselves and saying, hey, what are my issues? And realizing that we do have issues, whatever they might
Mhm,
look like, we have them. And so we have to be
mm,
able to identify those issues so we can get to the point where we're building wealth and open to learn more about how to be financially literate.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me, if I could chime in, right,
sure.
Latasha. It is overwhelming, no question about it. Just like AI is can be overwhelming, but I'm stepping into it, right? Because it's here. It's right. It's not like the future. It's here. AI is here, right? But in terms of personal finance or anything. The thing is to, they have a term called chunking it down. So we take
Mhm.
something that's big and you break it down to bite size. So what I do, right, for other stuff, but I'm saying here's a suggestion on how to get at the abundance of information, and how it can be intimidating and make you even more anxious and all that. Two things. One thing I do, not just for personal finance, but just other things, is a part of my morning routine. Part of my morning routine. I have a morning routine. I get up, usually 5, 6 in the morning, right? Um, and it is quiet, right? And being quiet in the house, quiet in the city, relatively speaking. And so within the first few hours alone, first 2 hours, let's say from 5 to 7, around 7:30, I'm heading to the gym. I used to be 7. I'm up. So it's routine. Same thing like in prison, right? It's very routine. Some of those things, I hate to say this, but you can take some of the structural things
Right.
and make it work for you. It's one thing to be in a carceral setting and you got to get up at a certain time because it's count time or it's this or that and you
Hmm.
got to do
Hmm.
no, you institute your own structure. You institute your own structure. So for me, the morning routine is that structure, is the discipline that you talked about. I
Hmm.
don't I don't say, am I gonna do that today? No, that's what I do. You know what I'm saying? Like after a while, it's like I go to the gym several times a week. That's what I do. It's part of my lifestyle. So you make your morning routine. You develop a morning routine. So the first 20 minutes or half hour, you read something, you watch a YouTube video, you read a book on personal finance. That's it. You take it in bite size, right?
Hmm.
You learn one. Imagine, just think about this. Imagine if you learn one, you say for 2026, we can start right now as a result of this conversation. Every day you're going to learn one new term, personal finance term, or you're going to read one page or whatever. Just imagine from now, let's say to the end of the year, we talking about, let me see, maybe 280 because we're in the fourth month now, maybe 280 different terms or pages or whatever criteria you want to use that you can learn. And you can spend 10, 15 minutes learning it. What is stocks? What is investing? Just one a day. Just one. But just think about it. It's like having one penny add up to two, to three, to four. It's the same. We can collect so that it's not overwhelming. You just read a little bit a day, right? You ask ChatGPT each day, for example, to give you a new concept, a principle about money. Explain what inflation is, what interest rates, all those things that sounds like some esoteric stuff. It can be daunting for me. Like I said to you, I believe, Latasha, my second language is money, straight
Hmm.
up. Right, English is first, and and then money is second, and that's because I've internalized it to such the degree that even when they're talking technical stuff on the news, for example, I at least have an idea of what they're talking about. They use all these highfalutin words when they really talking about some basic stuff that's either going to help us or hurt us, right? That's how I
Right.
kind of look at it, right? So anyway, I just wanted to say that it's with the tools that we have at our disposal with the Google, the Microsoft, the Bing. I mean, all these other tools, especially ChatGPT. Now I use Claude. I've been using Claude, right? There is no excuse whatsoever to get all the information we need when we want it in the dosage, so to speak, that we want it and that could work for us. I just wanted to say that.
To build our capacity. Yes, building
Yes.
Very much so.
capacity is, that's the word, build, or the phrase, build capacity, and start where you are, but know that you have to start. I don't see we have any questions in the chat. If there is some contact information, if you have an organization that you want to drop in the chat, because we will be following up with I normally follow up with an email with some resources and things, some information that will, just we are not going to leave you hanging. Contact information will be provided, and resources that we discussed. I'll put that together for you, because we do not want to leave from here without you feeling supported, right? Or learning something that you can hold on to today. Because as I said earlier, this is a lot. This is not a um, one day conversation. This is a series of
Right.
conversations. This
Right.
is yeah, I've made up my mind to do
Mm-hmm.
different than what
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
have been. I've learned what does that look like, for you, because you can't be Joe, you can't be Neona, you can't be you just can't be who we are as individuals, but you can be who you are and make a decision that I want to be doing something different, especially in this economy. Especially in this economy. We always have to make sure that there's a future that we're building for ourselves, for our families, and and I know that no one here who been behind the wall want to go back.
Right.
Freedom
That's
might be
right.
a challenge, but it's better to be free, right?
That's right.
And
That's right.
so, and what does that look like? And often, and we know that there is a level of financial freedom where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not worried about where my next meal is coming from, because I have put those things in practice, and the structure and the discipline and the routine. So, as we close, like I said, if there's no questions as we close, I just want to once again thank Neon and Joe for being here, for their yes, because it's just really important. I learn from both of them. I say also too that Neona is the tax guru over there. You know.
Mm-hmm.
With
Mm-hmm.
taxes and just credit repair and all of that. So check her out. Joe is the wealth architect,
That's
and you
right.
hear his
Mm-hmm.
passion about, he's, has clips on TikTok, and he has books that's available on Amazon, all of those things. But we want you to start where you are. We want you to
Mm-hmm.
start where you are, and know that it's possible. There is hope after
Mm-hmm.
incarceration,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
after, not having, enough or a lot, regardless of what your situation is. But it does
Mm-hmm.
start with you. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
let this system define us in any kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we need to unite in a way that allows us to be better as an
Mm-hmm.
individual and
Mm-hmm.
as a community. So if all hearts and minds agree, like we say in in the church and people house,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for being here. And you know, let us know that you loved us in the chat while you
That's
go.
right.
Thank you,
Definitely
Miss
thank you
Harriet.
all. Tasha, I
Thank
want to
you.
thank you for having me here. I truly enjoyed it. I love the concept. I love the whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I wish we could have had more time, especially
Yes, ma'am.
more time for our participants to be able to talk to us. But it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I think we was able to give some information, if not all,
Right.
because of
Mm-hmm.
course we can't get everything out at one time. But
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
um, like you said, we got out enough to where it sparked a lot of conversation, which was that
Mm-hmm.
was the point, to get both of the to get our point of views out and see how other people's point of views are. So it
Mm-hmm.
definitely did what it was supposed to do.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a building. It's a building block. It's a
That's a
building block.
feeling. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully there's more within the community who will start to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
Yeah, thank you.
Harry. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Beverly. Thank you, Yolanda, and all, that we start to have these conversations, in
Mm-hmm.
our community, regardless of where we come from. So,
All right.
So let me just say this. So, like I said, we need to. I use the term normalize these conversations, right?
mm,
Yeah.
Make them normal, right? This is not what other people do. It's what we do. That's what we
mm,
we got to get used to saying that and holding it that way. And the other thing I would say is I want to thank everyone who's, like I said, Natasha for setting it up. Thank you, Neona, for being a co-panelist with me. Right, this has been fun. Right,
Yeah.
and for everybody who showed up, because in showing up, you have invested in yourself. That's
Mm-hmm.
real talk. That's how I look at it. Whether it's your morning routine, like I just talked about, or you on these type of calls, you're here for a reason, right? You could have been doing
Absolutely.
anything else. Our time is the most precious commodity or thing we have, more than
Mm-hmm.
money, more than anything. If you have no more time, you have no more nothing. Period. And I'm realizing that the older I get, it's like this thing is real, right? And so my point, though, you know what I'm saying? My point, though, is that I applaud everyone who was on this call today, on this,
Mm-hmm.
because it shows that you're serious. You may not know exactly which way you're going to go or what you need to do, right? But you knew that you knew you want something more than what you have, right?
Correct.
And that's a good starting point. And so that type of awareness and this type of investment compounds over time. Like Latasha said, keep coming, showing up to places like this. Incorporate
Mm-hmm.
some of the other stuff that Neona and I talked about. Take the baby steps. Right? It doesn't have to be a Herculean thing, and
Right.
in then 1 month you're gonna have it all together. I'm still working on stuff, right? This is a lifelong thing. This is culture, right? This whole
Mm-hmm.
thing about finance and money. It's a big part of all of our lives. So why not invest and take a little bit of time every single day? There's something that we do every single day, and some of it is not healthy. It's not good for us. Right? Right? I'm just keeping it real. So if we could replace whatever that something is with 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes of some personal finance diet, so to speak, like that becomes our diet, that becomes our fuel, the sky's the limit. That's what I'm gonna close out with that.
Yeah, and I
Very
think so
much
too.
so.
I think with like mind also, because we don't heal really in isolation, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is just like the aftermath. I think we
Right.
Mm-hmm.
done. Everybody can leave or you can stay, right? But
They stay for a few, yeah.
it's like-minded people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm surrounding
Mm-hmm.
myself with people who are doing things opposite to my goals, then have a saying.
Right.
I got a lot of little nice ditties. People will either bring you up. People are like elevators. They'll either bring you up or they'll bring you
Mm-hmm.
down or they'll keep you stuck, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
you want to make sure that you are in environments and around people who are bringing you up, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like either we're going to build or you're going to bounce, right? It's really
Mm-hmm.
that simple,
Mm-hmm.
and so your relationships, even as you're relating with, as far as money is concerned, in relationships, that is how you should navigate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is this a building relationship? Is it going
Mm-hmm.
somewhere? Because you're going to
Mm-hmm.
either bring me up or you're going to
Mm-hmm.
bring me down. I love you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love you
Yeah.
like a fat kid love cake, but at the end of the
You gotta
day,
go.
you're going to either bring me up or you're going to bring me down, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we need to be comfortable um creating space from things and people who
Mm-hmm.
are not going to elevate us to where we want to go. Not transactional. Not
Right, right,
transactional relationships. No,
right,
not
right.
that.
Substance.
Relationships of substance where is there's a
Mm-hmm.
level of reciprocity where, okay, yeah, I'm getting something from you, but in the same way, you're getting something back from me, right?
Correct.
And then, and if it doesn't last forever, it's okay because it was profitable in the interim, right? It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't
Mm-hmm.
just, something came out of it that was beneficial for us both because
Mm-hmm.
we're building my capacity, your capacity. Once again, this is not just, my connecting with Joe or Neona is not just, oh, because they did a good job on the panel. It's because now I see what's
Mm-hmm.
possible and I
Right.
Mm-hmm.
see how I can, there's a blueprint. We don't have to make up everything on our own. There's a blueprint,
Right. Right.
it's a blueprint,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't mention it well, and think of outside the cell, entrepreneurs guide for the formerly incarcerated or the incarcerated. You did
Mm-hmm.
that a million years ago,
I did in
I mean, literally.
2007.
and
Mm-hmm.
and that's a blueprint for
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
individuals who had a history of incarceration or who were incarcerated, um to say, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. Let me see this book. And since then
Mm-hmm.
have made other books, right?
That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah.
But that was the blueprint, so
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Mm-hmm.
and these are the things that we can really say, okay, if somebody already did it, somebody already did it, let me look and glean from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So those are the types of relationships that we should have or invest our
I mean,
time in, because there's so
I mean,
many other relationships that could waste our time that we're not doing anything with. And when you did time, you
mm-hmm.
don't want to waste no more time
That's
with
true.
foolery.
That's true. That's a fact. Let me say.
Right?
So
It's like I don't have
no, that
time to
is
be with the foolery,
no, that is true. You look at time differently. After you
and
do
you gotta
time, you
look
look
at
at
time
time
differently.
differently. I tell people don't be showing up late, this and that, and I'm not like crazy about it, but I'm getting a little stricter because I'm like, man, don't be wasting my goddamn time. I'm not trying to be funny, because
Right.
Hmm.
people take a
I
lot,
agree
so
with
much.
you.
Yeah, people take so much for granted. Coming, half hour late, hour later. No, your time
Yep.
ain't worth more than mine, more valuable than mine. Not trying to be funny, and mine
Hmm.
is no more valuable than anybody else. We all have 24 hours in a day. How are we
Mhm.
going to manage that? How are we going to maximize it? That's the goal. The difference between one person who is quote unquote successful and another, it's a whole bunch of variables, but part of it is how they spend their time.
Yep.
Hmm.
Right? That's why the morning routine is important. Between 5 and 7 in the morning, I accomplish some days, not all days, more in those 2 hours than most people accomplish in a couple of days or a week. And I'm
Yep.
serious. I'm putting together apps. I'm doing all stuff. But it's like concentrated time, blocking
Yeah.
the time. That's the whole
It's
thing.
quiet.
And yeah, exactly. And I'm freshest in the morning. If I get a good night's sleep, which is most nights, in the morning, I got my brain is best at functioning. So we need to go with our energy level. But one thing I
Mhm.
want to say that Neona touched on earlier is your goals, right? And I talk about that a lot as well. Your goals and your value. Right? Your
Mhm.
goals is where you want to be. I'm oversimplifying, and your values is what's important to you. And the way we need to think about dollars as tools is: are they in when we spend them, right? Which we will do. Are they in service to our goals and our values?